Hi, my name is Daniel Mok, and today I'll be talking about Experiment 4, Time, Complexity, and Order. This will be split into two parts. Part 1 is where we'll be doing the contemplative walk and recording data, and I'll talk about the results of that. And Part 2 is I'll be talking about the results of watching others doing contemplative walk. And here is the map of my walk, and what happened is that we started from the UC, as you can see on the yellow line here at the bottom right hand corner. We started there and then walked towards Gordon and up Gordon towards College. In College we reached Winegard Walk, and while we walked along the Winegard Walk we met with a row of trees, walked in a diagonal pattern and followed that yellow path and all the way back towards the Winegard Walk. While I was walking down the Winegard Walk, I found it rather interesting, so therefore I made a sketch of the drawing because of the following interesting results that I found that made it contemplative. So what made this contemplative? Well, there aren't any cars around, so it didn't make a lot of disturbance in my walk. And pavements sometimes is boring. I know that sometimes we think that boring will make it more contemplative, but then sometimes when it's boring, you tend to not want to look at it and look at something more engaging. And so having these bricks around, even though it's engaging in a sort of way, but it allows you to follow these cracks, which allows you to be actually more focused and not look everywhere else if you're in a contemplative mood. And also to make it more interesting is the color red and make it more bright and for you to focus better toward on the ground rather than the gray boring pavement we have. I found also on my other walks, such as along College, I found if there's gap space gap, maybe someone might find that a consistent pattern, making it contemplative, but that's just a little bit of thinking I was doing in regards to continuality when we're looking at contemplation. During our walk, we looked at predictability, but from predictability we use that data to think about complexity, and we found that in close places we found a higher complexity, such as walking along the UC towards Gordon. We can see that there's more blue representing high complexity, and I found that when you're walking along these paths there's more solid structures, not softscapes such as plants around it, so making it feel more enclosed and more complex. And also the complexity kind of increases during intersection, because sometimes you might have many things happening at once at intersections, therefore causing more complexity. And complexity increases as space becomes tighter, such as I said before, in the UC, walking towards College, the space is really tight in that area. But when you're walking up on Gordon, the space becomes less complex because there's more trees around and the road is wider and the area is much larger. Even in the Johnston Green, it's harder to see higher complex areas. Sometimes we see more complex areas in the Johnston Green area because maybe there's more plants around and you feel more enclosed within the plant places. But some strange data we've got is that when we walk down the diagonal path along the row of trees, we see it being low complexity. I think it's because the road is wide and the trees are high, so we get a sense of space, and we feel that we're not enclosed so much. So the higher the element is, the less complex and it becomes. And also it depends how much space you get. This would define the complexity. Here we compare the data with everyone's data. We see that the complexity is much higher at the intersection areas, and also in areas where the trees are much enclosed, such as the diagonal walk from the intersection of Gordon and College, walking towards Weingard Walk. We can see that there's more plants in certain areas and causing more complexity. As I said before about space and the tightness of the space and the height of the trees might be lower than what we would see in the walk from the Weingart Walk towards the Gordon. So what worked and why did it work? Well, as I said before, as repeated, when there's a roll of trees, it gives you a sense of continuality, and also the trees has to be high up, and what happens is that the road has to be wide, and the ground has to have a certain pattern to it if you're following along the ground, where bricks would be a good element because it gives you cracks and then allows you to follow it unconsciously. And the red color sort of makes it kind of shows up better and makes you focus on the road rather than makes you bored and not want to focus on it like a gray pavement. As for part 2 of the experiment 4, I did an observation along the Weingard Walk, and I measured the distance from the fire hydrant to the change in pavement color, and the distance is 8.5 meters. And here's my data. In my data, I counted for the amount of people walking together, the distance it took, which is consistently 8.5 meters, and the time it took in seconds. If they're young, old, or mixed, which is kind of subjective because I actually didn't know exactly how old they were, and the sex they were, male or female, or if they're in a group, it would be a mix of male or female if I couldn't tell how many they were. And in the end, I talk about meters per second by calculating distance divided by time. And at this moment, you can pause to look at my data. From my data analysis, I found that it took between 0.39 meters per second to 1.42 meters per second to walking pace, I found. And most of the people that walked in about 8 seconds giving the mode of 1.06 and the mean of 1.03. And the more or less people in the group did not really affect the pace. And what makes them contemplate? I looked at their positions. I didn't really find that if they looked up or down or right or left, if they're straight ahead, looking straight ahead, that they're contemplating more or less. I found that it didn't really change that much. And also, if they're conversing or not. If they're conversing, it didn't really matter that much either. I found that what mattered most is that if there's a high wall with patterns on it, such as vines climbing on it, as you can see on the bottom right here, that someone is following a pattern that is towards an unknown end, that really makes them contemplate more and allows them to have more focus. Also, I found that spacing, the larger the spacing, the lower complexity allows the person to come to think more and on their own and disregard their surroundings. And this ends my presentation. Thank you for listening.